Picking up back up with connective tissues. Now the second type of connective tissue has a similar cell type to the first. However, the cells are arranged differently in that they are in these parallel bundles, and being as though they're in these nicely, highly organized parallel bundles, it gives them a very dense structure, and that lends to its function because we'll see fibrous connective tissue in ligaments and tendons, and these are these tough fibers that link your joints to or link your bones to other bones in your joints, which are the ligaments, and then also these fibers or these tissues that link your muscles to your bones, which are your tendons. So let's take a quick look at a quick illustration of this. There we go, from our wolf example. So here we have that fibrous connective tissue, and you can see that these cells in that bottom left-hand panel, where it's pointing out the nuclei of these cells, they're arranged in these nice, wonderful bundles, very well organized, and it lends to its strength and integrity of those tissues. And that is in comparison to, if we look back to the loose fibrous connective tissue, here we have some cells, and they actually are of the same cell type. They're just kind of hanging out. They're not really organized in any particular fashion. And as we talked about with loose connective tissue, really it's just kind of like a packing material. And adipose tissue is a type of this loose connective tissue. Alright, so on to the other three. Now I'm not going to really have much really specific about these, just to know that they are connective tissues. And that would be the cartilage, and this is the material you'll find between your joints, cushioning that interaction between those two bones. And then bone itself is actually a connective tissue, as is blood. And in this next slide we see all of the 5 types of connective tissues, so be sure you understand that these 5 types are connective tissues, or what the 5 types of connective tissue are. Okay, so we've gone over epithelial tissue, connective tissue, 2 of the 4 major types. And again, with muscular tissue, we're really not going to go too in depth with this type of tissue, just to know that there are 2 major types, and that is the voluntary, the kind that is under your control, which is the skeletal muscle shown in the upper panel, and then you have smooth muscle, which lines your digestive tract and moves the food, for instance, through your digestive tract, as we'll see in the digestive system chapter. And then also cardiac muscle is another type of involuntary type of muscle, and that's really pretty much the extent of what we'll talk about with muscle tissue. On to nerve tissue. Nerves are these cells that process information, sense information, send it up to the brain, where the brain integrates and processes what to do with that information, and then sends it back down to the motor neurons to do something about whatever the stimulus might be. Alright, so those tissues all comprise or combine into organs, our next level in the hierarchy, if you're thinking back to the biological hierarchy from the very beginning of the course. And here we have an example with the stomach, taking a cross-section through the stomach. We have, of course, the epithelial tissue lining the stomach, so where it would come in contact with the food that you eat. And then we have tissue, connective tissue, connecting the epithelial tissue to the smooth muscle below. And the smooth muscle would allow the churning of your stomach to mechanically digest food in your stomach. And then, of course, the epithelial tissue on the outside of the stomach, forming that organ. Now, the only tissue we don't actually see in this organ, you guessed it, is nerve tissue, and that is because it's really spread throughout the entire organ, and it's so diffuse that it's really not identifiable in any one particular part of the organ because it is spread throughout. Okay. So on to just looking at energy requirements, utilizing your nutrition intake, which we'll talk more about in coming chapters. But rough estimates here as far as your level of activity, and then being able to calculate your daily calorie requirements. And you have to kind of subtract calories away as you age, and take the calculation from there. There are some examples in your study guide for you to practice with those. Now, something also that's important, basal metabolic rate. This is really the minimum amount of calories somebody needs for their body to function on a daily basis. So 16 to 1800 in males and 13 to 1500 in females, and just depending on the individual person, it could be more or less. Now, this is really the amount of nutrients or calories someone would need just to perform the basic bodily functions, keeping your heart going, your brain functioning, your lungs filling with air and expiring. So just those basic functions require this many calories. Okay. So one last thing we'll talk about here at the end of the chapter is this idea of homeostasis, keeping a constant internal environment in the face of external changes that organisms, animals in particular, come in contact with or encounter in the natural world. So we're going to be taking a look at the homeostatic loop of temperature, body temperature. So if we take a look at this diagram, at the very center, we'll see homeostasis is around 36 to 38 degrees Celsius. And that's about, 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit for us Americans, because we are the only ones who do not use the standard system. But science does, so we always use Celsius. But that's normal body temperature. And if it becomes too cool or too warm, then our body has certain mechanisms to prevent the body temperature from going up too high or going down too low. So we're going to take a look first at cooling. So your body is too hot, your body temperature increases. Nerve receptors in your skin sense that, sends a signal to your brain, which is the control center. And the brain interprets that as the body temperature is going up. This is not good. So it sends signals out to effector organs, in particular here the sweat glands, to produce sweat, a nice wet substance on your skin to allow for evaporation and cooling. And also it causes the blood vessels to dilate, which means they get larger, and that allows them to dissipate more heat from the body surface. And as a result of those two effectors, the body temperature goes back down. Now also, we have a situation here where we have the opposite, where the body temperature is going down. So you go out on a cold winter's day, and nerve receptors again in your skin are going to sense that, send a signal to your brain that your body temperature is going below that homeostatic level, and it's going to process that signal in the control center, which is the brain, and the brain will send out a signal to, again, the blood vessels, which are going to constrict. So blood vessels constrict and move down a little bit deeper in the tissues, away from the surface of the skin to reduce heat loss. And then also, the effector here with trying to generate a little bit of heat would be your skeletal muscles, and they involuntarily move and contract. And in doing so, this would be shivering, of course, involuntary movement of those skeletal muscles. And in doing so, they are converting energy, chemical energy, to, of course, kinetic energy, and in doing so, they generate or they dissipate a little bit of energy as heat. So it allows a little bit of heating, and that hopefully will bring that body temperature back up to normal or homeostatic level. Now these are just short-term fixes. Again, if you were in a cold environment for a very long time, you'd be in trouble because these homeostatic control mechanisms would really not be enough to keep your body temperature up for an extended period of time. Okay. So that is all we will discuss here in this chapter. And if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to let me know.